All right, welcome to our next notes video, guys. I know it's been quite an interesting ride here over the last few weeks, but hopefully these videos have brought some normalcy, I guess you could say, to learning math and going over it and just making sure that things are where they need to be and getting you guys going on learning some stuff. Okay, so we have our last lesson here on section 9.3. Okay, so this section is actually going to be something a little different than what you've been used to. It's still kind of in our same unit of being able to model information and data, but we're going to talk about a table. It's called a two-way table today. All right, so what that means is we're going to be comparing two frequencies with multiple other types of sets of data. So in this example, in the warm-up, you can see it says use the table to complete the exercises. Okay, so we've got two parts to this table. We have one question saying, have you been outside of the US? And then there is another one that says, do you speak more than one language? And you can see that the answers to those questions are posted there as well. And what you're able to figure out is you can see how many students and how many people have been outside and been able to speak more than one language. Okay, so we have a couple of different pieces of information. So we're going to compare and look at these tables today, go over some vocab for you, and then we'll have a quick little Google form quiz to go with this, or exit ticket, if you will, and then you'll have the big ideas assignment to go with it the following day. Okay, so the first question says, how many people surveyed speak more than one language? So what we need to look at here, guys, is the question listed right here. So we're looking to see who answered yes to speaking more than one language. Now we have two numbers here, okay? So we have yes list, we have 12, and we have 4. Now we're not talking about if they've been outside the US for this question, so it's really important that you are only paying attention to this question right now. So if there are 12 people that said yes, they speak more than one language, and 4 as well, even though only 12 have been outside of the US and 4 have not, this still means that both of them have answered yes in this case. So we would say there is a total of 12 plus 4. There are 16 people then that speak more than one language according to this survey. Okay, so 12 and 4, because they both answered yes. Both groups that said yes and no to being outside of the United States. Okay, now the next question is, how many people surveyed have never traveled outside of the US? So this is now going into, now we're looking at this question. Okay, now we're looking here. The answer, we're looking to see how many people fit in the no column, have never traveled outside of the US. So we have another one here. We have 4 and we have 12 that have answered no. So then again, a total of 4 plus 12, and that is 16 people as well. Okay, hopefully I'm not going too fast here, but as long as you understand that we're kind of looking at them individually, not together right now. We are going to be looking at them together as we go through, but it's just important right now we're just understanding how to read this table so we can then go through and do some of the tasks involving two-way tables. And then last, how many people only speak one language and have traveled outside of the US? So now we're actually going to combine. So now we're looking to see, okay, so we got to figure out people that only speak one language. So this is going to be starting here. We're starting here. We're trying to see who has answered no. Okay, so if you speak more than one language, you would have answered yes. If you only speak one, you would have said no. So we're looking at these two numbers here. Now we have a second qualifier. Okay, now we got to figure out, now we're looking at this question, okay, and have traveled outside of the United States. Now we're looking to see who has answered yes to this. So the actual response then we're going to use is the combination of both of those. So in this instance, we can now answer and say that 18 people speak more than one language and have traveled outside of the US. I'll go back up here so you can kind of see. Okay, so again, we found the criteria for the first question, which was those who do not speak more than one language. Okay, and then we answered using the second criteria of been outside the US in terms of yes. Okay, so hopefully that made sense, because now we're going to start talking a little bit more in depth about two-way tables, how you can read them and how to make them. Okay, so how you can read and make a two-way table is our central question, or how can you, excuse me. In our learning targets, I can interpret and create a two-way table given some sample data, okay? So depending on the type of information that you have, there are only certain types of displays that you can make. And if you have a set of data where you have basically two sets of questions being asked to the same group of people, and they have to be simple questions like yes, no, or you have to have them within a certain age range or group or something like that, you can classify and order the table in a two-way table. It's actually quite useful when surveying a same population that has multiple data points, okay? So some vocab for you guys. If you want to pause the video right now so you can write down these vocab words so you have them. Otherwise, you can just look at them however you need to. But a two-way table displays two categories of data collected from the same source. This is different from a scatter plot because we're collecting two different types of information. Whereas in a scatter plot, we're comparing two things. But with a two-way table, we're actually comparing two different types of questions within the same source, okay, the same population, okay? And then each entry in a table is called a joint frequency. This basically means that it's the individual number of those who have asked and answered questions specifically to what was being asked. So for example, we have a table here of students surveyed on whether they studied and how they did, okay, and how they did, pass or fail. So on the top you can see it says student studied versus not studied. So students were asked, did you study or did you not study? Okay, and then it was cross-referenced. Basically just means that we're comparing the two numbers now with whether they passed the test or they failed it. Okay, so if you have a table here where you have the students answer a question that gave you one of two answers and you had a result that gave you one of two choices, pass or fail, you have then four joint frequencies. So you can see the arrow pointing to that. So you have those who studied and passed, those who studied and failed, those who did not study and pass, and those who did not study and failed, okay? So what this is asking is how many of the students in the survey studied for the test and passed, okay? So what we're doing is we're seeing, okay, so who studied, okay, and passed. So we need to look, okay, so we start here, we start with the student. Okay, so for those who studied, that's in this column. So there were 21 people who studied and passed and one that failed. And the number that we are looking for specifically right now is 21. So 21 students studied and passed. Okay, so again, you're just looking to see where they line up, where they cross together. Okay, if you study and you pass, there would be 21 students. This is how you would answer. If you did not study and you passed, you would fall in that column of 2. Okay, that's the 2 students who did not study. So it's just understanding what is being asked of you when you do these. All right, they're relatively straightforward to read. It's just making sure that you understand what is being asked of you when you do them. Okay, so again, if you need to go back and write down those things, the joint frequencies, again, each entry in the table because there are 2 sets of information for the data. Now, a marginal frequency, okay, this is where the information becomes a little bit more important. Okay, a marginal frequency is the sums of each row and column in a two-way table. So what this means is we're going to add up the results depending on what column and what row we're looking at. Okay. So you can see how many students of each specific individual data point, how many people were actually included in that part and how many were actually figured out here. Okay, so if we have this table, so what we're trying to do is we're going to first figure out how many studied. This is the total number of students that studied. Okay, so there are 4 marginal frequencies because, again, we have 4 different sets of data that have multiple data points. So those that studied, we take the 2 data points here. So we have 21 students that studied and passed and 1 that failed, so a total of 22 students. Okay, so we just add those up. All right. Now the next thing we're going to look at is if you did not study. Okay, and again, we just add those up. Okay, so those who did not study. Did not study. So we add those up there, and we're going to get 2 plus 6. So that's a total of 8 students. Okay? So if we combine the number of students here that show how many students that actually studied did not study, 22 plus 8 would mean that there are 30 students in the entire class. Okay? So in order to tell that, or to make sure that we did this correctly, if we add now how many students passed and how many students failed, we should be getting the same number. Okay? Because we know that the combination of these two, it's 30 students. That's how many total should be. The sum of the same question or the same response that you're finding the marginal frequencies to gives you the total number of students that are in the class, or the number of source data that you have. Okay? Because we have studied in red and did not study in green, the sum of those would equal 30. So if we do our pass and fail now, okay, so I'm going to do this one in blue. So those who passed are going to be in blue. Okay, so that means we're going to take 21 plus 2. Okay, so those who passed, we have 21 plus 2, that would be 23. I'm actually going to put a little line here just to go through and differentiate here. So we have those who passed, okay, and now we're going to take those who failed in yellow here and add those up. So we have 1 plus 6. So if I write failed, 1 plus 6 would be 7. And if we add those up, 23 plus 7 is 30. So we are good there. Okay? So now what we can say is that there are 22 students that studied. And then you can now start comparing. So 21 of the 22 studied, passed. 8 of those who did not study, we can look and then say 22 of the 30 studied, and only 8 did not. And then you're able to compare looking at the types of information that you have. Okay, so again, it's just being able to understand and interpret those things based on what you need to know. So you can now look at this and say, well, 22 studied, 8 did not, 23 passed, and 7 failed. So it actually has a pretty good correlation here. So if you studied, more often than not, you're going to pass. And if you did not study, it's a pretty quick correlation there as well that you are probably going to fail. It's a pretty easy table to read once you do that. Okay? So hopefully that made sense. And again, these are maybe a little bit different from what you're used to, but it's a relatively easy concept to go over. So what I'd like you guys to do, if you have the notes with you or you're just following along in a notebook or something like that, pause the video, see if you can figure these out on your own, okay? Pause the video. When you come back here in a second, we're going to start going over the answers. All right, so hopefully you had a chance to pause your video here and go over your answers, because we are now going to go over this example. It's the same thing what we just went over, now it's a different set. Okay, so we're talking about a random survey of students in your cafeteria and their plans for a football game and a school dance. Okay, so these two different events are going on. You're asking the same kids the same questions, and we have our results listed below. Okay, so how many students will attend the dance but not the football game? Okay, so we're going to say who attended the dance but did not attend the football game. Okay. So those who attended the dance, we had 35 who attended the dance and the football game, and then 5 who attended the dance but not the football game. So it's 5 students here is what you should have answered for part A. Now it says for part B, find and interpret the marginal frequencies. So what you should have done, and actually what's kind of cool, is you can make an extension table of your frequencies here, so you can actually write the numbers below. Okay, so all you do is you take, then we're going to just do 35 plus 16, so we add that up. 35 plus 16 is 51. Okay, and now we're going to add up. We're going to add up these, so we get 25. So 51 plus 25 should give us 76. Okay, now we're going to add up going across here. So we're going to do 35 plus 5 is 40. So those are the number of students who attended the dance. And then we have not attended the dance. We should have 36, and 40 plus 36 does equal 76. So you can now say that 40 students attended the dance, 36 did not, and you can say 51 attended the football game and 75 did not as well. So then, again, just going through those marginal frequencies, being able to compare and look at data. Guys, this is really important data for if you are someone who looks at frequencies of large surveys, large populations. In these two-way tables, I know this is specific to just 2 sets of data, but these can get into 3, 4, 5-way tables depending on how much information you gather and whether you want to see comparisons between those two things. That's really what we're doing here. We're comparing and trying to figure out specific marginal frequencies so we can now make decisions based off of what types of results you get. Okay, now the last thing that we're going to do here is we are going to look at how to make our own two-way tables. And again, they're relatively straightforward here, guys. All you have to do is be able to figure out what are the two things that you're comparing, okay? And in this case, we actually have a little one that's a little bit different, okay? So I'm going to slide this up so that way we can see it a little bit better, okay? So what we have is you randomly survey students between the ages of 12 and 17 about whether they ride the bus to school. The results are shown in tally sheets. So this is if you were to go around and see, okay, how old are you and do you ride the bus, okay? And it looks like it was split into groups of 12 to 13-year-olds, 14 to 15-year-olds, and 16 to 17-year-olds, okay? So your first column is going to be whether you ride the bus or not. And then the next thing is you're putting it into a category by age. So this is that example of you can have a 3, 4, 5, 6 wide answer response, just as long as you're able to compare the age consistently across your 2 data points, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to start by doing our age column. So we'll start by saying age is up here, okay? So that's our first. Now we got to make our subgroups, okay? So we have 3 sections. So we have 12 to 13, 14 to 15, and 16 to 17, okay? Now we have our other set here, okay? We'll set this up here. Okay, so this is going to be our rides the bus. So we either have yes or no. So this is rides bus, and this is in students. Okay, now we got to fill in the rest. So we've got, basically you just got to take your lines and you drop them straight down and extend across this way. So now we have our table set up, and if you guys want to pause and copy this along your paper, now all we got to do is figure out what all the tallies are, okay? So if we count for yes, they ride the bus, so that's what we're going to start with first. So we're going to fill out just this top row going across from 12 all the way up to 17. So 12 to 13-year-olds, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, so that's 5 groups of 5, so that's 20 plus 4, so we should have 24 that are in 24 that are in your actual group of 12 to 13-year-olds that ride the bus, right? Then 14 to 15, you have 12 students, okay? So again, because 5 plus 2 in that 14 to 15 column. And then the last one, you have 14, okay? Now if you go down to does not ride the bus, okay? We've got 16 that are 12 to 13 that do not ride the bus. 14 to 15, we have 13 students. And last, we've got 21 that do not. So what you just did is now made a two-way table. Now we have to do what it says here. It says include that marginal frequency for both of those. So now we're going to extend our table one more time so that we're able to figure out what those marginal frequencies of our table are, okay? So if we take our first column, we have 24 plus 16 for 12 to 13-year-olds. That should give us 40 students, okay? 12 plus 13 should give me 25. And then 14 plus 21 is 35, okay? So you should have 40 plus 25 plus 35. And that's a total of 100 students. So now if we add up our columns here of whether they do or do not ride the bus, we should have 24 plus 12 plus 14. That's 50. And we should expect that 16 plus 13 plus 21 does also equal 50. So the sums of our rows match up, and there is your two-way table. Okay? Again, just knowing what you have to set up and how you set it up is really important here, and just being able to distinguish between, okay, what am I comparing and how can I rearrange it? Because you got to know what your two frequencies are in order to actually figure that out. Okay? With that, I think we've got one more slide here. So it says, for each age group, what percent of students in the survey ride the bus to school, do not ride? Organize the results in the two-way table. Explain what one of the entries is. What I'm actually going to do, guys, is I'm not going to assign any of this part. I just wanted you to be able to do a two-way table here. So I'll save you guys some time here, because as long as you understand how to set that two-way table up, that's really what I'm looking for. Okay, guys? Basically, from here on out now, you're going to have a quick little exit ticket after each video. And then the next day will probably just be a big ideas. This is the last section I'm going to go over for this unit. And then we're actually going to move on to a new unit that involves a little bit of geometry. So it's talking about lines, triangles, angles, and such. Okay, so it's going to be some different stuff than you've seen before, but hopefully you're able to make those adjustments, and we will continue. What I'm planning on doing is maybe sending a little video just to give you guys a hint of how I'm doing, and give you some ideas of how I'm staying busy, and just offer some words of encouragement, because I know this is getting kind of crazy with everybody being home, and I just want you guys to know that I miss you guys, and I want you all to feel as comfortable as possible. Feel free to reach out and email if you have any questions about anything, and hopefully the lessons have been going well. If you have any comments or any questions, concerns about how they are, you just got to let me know, guys, okay? It's really important that I'm giving you the best experience possible, and I'm not overwhelming or confusing you too much, okay? Have a great rest of your day, guys, and I really hope that you're able to figure out as much as you can on your own. And then again, if you have any questions, feel free to email me. All right, have a great day, guys.